This is Joe Green, and I want to share a couple of thoughts with you. And I like to always give my viewpoint from a historical, a cultural, and a biblical perspective. And one of the things that we see here, we look at the news, and as you can see in the title, we're going to talk a little bit more about Sean Puff Daddy, P. Diddy Combs, but only briefly, because all the things that are occurring every single day. You can find thousands upon thousands of YouTube videos of people are talking about what's going on. People are talking about and speculating about who was in Diddy's parties and who did Diddy do, and all that other stuff. So, but one of the things I want to make a bold statement. I believe that the reason that this is dominating the news cycle is because there's something larger that is occurring. You have to recognize when the global elite, when they're doing something, they usually have some type of distraction that keeps people not looking at what's really happening, the largest part of danger, but something that is like the shiny object syndrome that everybody wants to look over here, look at what's happening. And whenever you include celebrities and popular names are thrown out there, then we get really kind of like encapsulated with them, right? We can't focus on anything else. Everybody's talking about it, no matter what walk of life you're from. You probably have talked about it. But when you think about it on a larger scale, and I'm going to tell you why I believe what I believe is happening and what the distraction is, the smoke and mirrors is all about. Um, Again, I'm going to make a bold statement because what is occurring around the world is that the global elite, I believe, are preparing for World War III. They're trying to promote World War III, and I'm going to tell you why I believe that. When you think about the war in Russia, I mean, the war Russia and Ukraine, and how involved everybody was in that, people were flying the Ukrainian flags because the media did a great job of making us believe that this was something we really should care about. Now, think about this, especially from the standpoint of people of color in America. There's so many challenges that are affecting us locally, that why is it that people got so emotionally attached with Ukraine, which is halfway across the world? You think about this war with Israel and Hamas, and people are taking sides, and I would venture to say that most of the people that are really passionate about this thing, a lot of these college kids and on college campuses, and all these people that we are seeing really getting vocal about it and getting argumentative about it, most of them probably don't even understand the deeper issues of it. People are just picking sides, and they're picking sides for whatever reason. But it's become a distraction, right? But guess what took over all those distractions? This whole story of P. Diddy. So that has dominated the news cycle. There's a gentleman by the name of Albert Pike, and I'm going to tell you about Albert Pike. Some of you probably are familiar with Albert Pike. Interesting thing about Albert Pike, in case you think he was a minor player and not a big deal, Albert Pike actually had a statue in Washington, D.C. that was recently taken down in 2020. When the Black Lives Matter protesters were tearing down statues, Albert Pike was one of them, primarily because he was a Confederate general. He was involved with the Ku Klux Klan, and he also was pro-slavery, which was interesting as to why he would be in Washington, D.C., but that just goes to tell you how big of a deal Albert Pike was. So Albert Pike lived from December 29th, 1809 until April the 2nd, 1891. He's described as an American author, a poet, an orator, a lawyer, and a Confederate States Army general. He previously served as a senior officer of the Confederate States Army Commander, the District of Indian Territory, in the Trans-Mississippi Theater, a prominent member of the Freemasons. Pike served as Sovereign Grand Commander of the Supreme Council British Rite, the southern jurisdiction of USA, from 1859 to 1891. And again, Albert Pike, many people attributed him to helping to bring the Illuminati and the Freemasons together, or he's one of the players at least. But let's talk about Albert Pike. So there's this thing you can look up. Albert Pike penned a letter that's attributed to him August the 15th, 1871. And in this letter, he graphically outlined plans for three world wars. Plans for three world wars. This was 1871 that this letter was reported to have been written. Now, some people say he had a vision. Albert Pike was also a Luciferian, and he said in his quotes, being a very high-ranking Freemason, he said without a shadow of a doubt that the God of Freemasonry is Lucifer, and the God of the New World Order is Lucifer as well. And those were his words, and he was very well versed in Freemasonry. But anyway, he is attributed to writing these letters that outline 3 world wars that the globalists, Illuminati, the ruling elite would provoke and promote and orchestrate in order to bring in the New World Order. Now, you may say, "Oh, that's cap. It's just, it's something that's not real. It's an exaggeration." But I'll tell you, I came across these letters probably about 15 years ago. And the reason that's significant, as you will see, because what we see occurring right now is something that is spoken of in these letters, right? So 15 years ago, you think about what's happening in the Middle East between Israel and the Palestinians and Hamas, and you think about how everybody has an opinion, a very deep emotional opinion about it. And a lot of people, like I said, I don't think a lot of people really understand all the details behind it. But let me tell you about this letter. So this letter was exposed or was released to the public by a gentleman by the name of William Guy Carr. And William Guy Carr was a former intelligence officer in the Royal Canadian Navy. And this letter was supposedly written, Albert Pike wrote to a gentleman by the name of Mazzini. And Mazzini was a very influential person at this time as well. It appears that Carr learned about this letter from Cardinal Cairo Y. Rodriguez of Santiago, Chile, who wrote The Mystery of Freemasonry Unveiled. That's the book that he wrote. So let's talk about this. In this letter, Pike outlines 3 world wars that's going to be orchestrated by the powers that be. And after the third world war, there would be what's called the New World Order. And if you've been following my videos, if you've been listening to my teachings, I talk about the New World Order, the one world governmental system that the Bible talks about. So we're going to give you some scripture as well. But this is what they're going towards. This is what they're moving towards, a one world governmental system. Now, for those of you who may know or may not know, in this governmental system, this New World Order, there are 3 capitals. There are 3 primary pillars of this, and it's economics, it's government, and it's religion, right? So the 3 capitals of this New World system are the religious capital, which is Vatican City. And they mark them by having a big obelisk, and the obelisks are phallic symbols. So when you get a chance, you can look up what phallic symbols mean, for those of you who may or may not know. So it's Vatican City is the religious capital. London, England is the financial capital. And Washington, D.C. is the political capital, where our military is headquartered at. And so those are the 3 capitals. But we have these 3 wars that the ruling elite are going to, or said they're going to orchestrate. Now, we've already had 2 world wars. And as I described them, a letter that was written in 1871 that really outlines this. You may or may not be skeptical and say, well, anybody can write something after the fact. But I want to take it deeper, because this one, like I said, I knew personally, I had come across the information of this letter at least about 15 or 20 years ago, or maybe longer, but I knew about the letter. And so as I see these things unravel, it's very clear that something is working behind the scenes to try to orchestrate making these things happen. The First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia and of making that country a fortress of atheistic communism. The divergences caused by the agents of the Illuminati between the British and Germanic empires will be used to foment this war. Now, for those of you who may not know, 1917, you had the Bolshevik Revolution, where the czars in Russia were overthrown. And then we know soon after that, communism took over in Russia. And it was very much an atheistic, communistic system of government. When it also talks about the British and the Germanic people. And so if you know that there's a group of people called the Khazars, and these Khazars migrated from Turkey and the Caucasoid Mountains in Turkey, migrated into Germany. Now, there was some families that were there that were part of this whole globalistic cabal. and part of the family migrated from Germany into Great Britain. And so you may or may not know that the Windsor family, the royal family of England, actually was called Gotha something. It was a German last name, and I know it, but it just escapes me right now. But they were cousins of the Germans and that were in power during the Nazis. And so some of the royal family got in trouble because they were friends with the Nazis, but it was because they were related to them. So when we look at this, and it talks about how the British and the Germanic empires will be used to foment this war or put it in place. The czars in Russia were overthrown, and then you had the communists take over Russia, and it was an atheistic communistic government, right? So that was the key. Now, just another side note, the czars of Russia, during the time of Abraham Lincoln, the globalist bankers wanted to come to America. And so Abraham Lincoln was the president at the time, and they wouldn't allow the international bankers to come to America. And so they threatened Abraham Lincoln because what they would do is one of the strategies that they would use in the Rothschild banking cartel is they would loan money to countries for them to go when they went to war, and they would charge them a huge amount of interest. And so many times, historically, it's been reported that they actually are on both sides of the war. They lend money to these countries to go to war, and then they make a profit. So it would be profitable for them not only to promote wars, but also they're going to make money off of loaning it to countries. So Abraham Lincoln, instead of taking their money, he denied them because he said the interest was too high. And so then the globalists threatened to send the French and the I think it was the Spanish, but I know it was the French army and maybe the Spanish army to fight on behalf of the South during the Civil War. And so, of course, they would have outnumbered the North, and the North would have probably lost. But what happened is the czars in Russia backed Lincoln, and they said, if you send the French and these other countries over there, then the Russians are going to go back to North, and the Russians were very powerful. So the bankers in retaliation helped to overthrow the czars in Russia through the Bolshevik Revolution, which helped to make way for the communists. The Second World War, this is interesting. The Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. And Zionism is a word that you guys should make yourself familiar with, because what happens is when you use the word, they try to equate it to something else, which it isn't. And then that's when they try to cancel people. So political Zionists, these are not religious people, they are political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel in Palestine. During the Second World War, internal communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social cataclysm. Now, let me give you a little insight about this. So when you talk about internal communism, see, the Nazis were overthrown, and I'm not giving any credit to the Nazis, but one of the things that the United States government did after World War II is that they took a lot of the Nazi scientists and a lot of the Nazi political leaders and even brought them to the United States and helped some of them escape. And the reason they did that is because the Nazis, because you got to realize that Karl Marx, who started communism, Marxism, socialism, I mean, that was the philosophy behind it. He was German, and he tried to implement communism in Germany, but the Nazis were able to defeat them. And so when Russia becomes communist and they become a huge threat, the United States government start to partner with the Nazis to find out how they were able to defeat the communists, because they felt like communism was such a huge threat. Marxism is very much a huge threat to them. And so they implemented their plan for World War II. After World War II, you have what's called the Balfour Proclamation, and what happened is these people from Europe that I'm trying to be careful so I don't get a strike or anything like that. These people from Europe, primarily in Germany and other parts of Europe, that were victimized. Now they were giving a plot of land in Palestine, because the Bible calls that area Palestine, and it became the nation of Israel. So World War II is over in 1947. The nation of Israel goes into effect 1948, right? And so uh, according to this letter, their plan worked for World War II, right? Which brings us to where we're at now. And like I said, that's why it's so important for us to understand things from a global historical perspective, so that we don't miss out on what is happening here. Um, Now, here's a couple things that may come up, because some people will try to check you historically, and I always try to do my research to make sure that I am accurate. In 1945, the Potsdam Conference between Harry Truman, Winston Churchill, and Joseph Stalin, a large portion of Europe was simply handed over to Russia. That's where you got the Soviet Union from. I mean, they had a lot of territory after this. And on the other side of the world, the aftermath of the war with Japan helped to sweep the tide of communism into China. And so Russia, which was communist, got huge portions of a whole lot of land and nations were given under Russian control. And then because of Japan being weakened, because for many years the Japanese and the Chinese were at war with each other, but now United States, they go in and they defeat Japan. They dropped a couple bombs and they went and occupied Japan. It allowed the communists to take over China. And so here's some detractors may say this, and again, this is why I always want to bring receipts. Some people would argue that the term Nazism and Zionism were not known in 1871, but you got to remember that the Illuminati invented these terms. So because they invented these terms, they use these terms, and of course, people think that a lot of these things that happen are like happen organically, but they're not. They're really planned ahead of time, and then they're released at their appointed times based on their schedule and their strategy. So in addition, communism as an ideology and a coined phrase originates in France during the French Revolution in 1785. Restif coined the phrase 4 years before the revolution broke out. Restif and Babeuf, in turn, were influenced by Rousseau, as was the most famous conspirator of them all, Adam Weishaupt. Now, you guys may know that name, Adam Weishaupt. He was German. Like I said, a lot of this stuff originated from Germany. And the reason it originated from Germany, like I mentioned to you, these Khazars from the Bible calls it ancient Pergamum, which is Turkey. And the Bible literally calls it the synagogue of the seat of Satan, where Satan dwells at, right? That's where they originated from. These people were, as I said in my last video, they were phallic symbol worshipers, right? They were into paganism and Satanism and Luciferianism. They believed that they were the serpent seed, and they practiced what's known as Jewish mysticism or Kabbalah, right? That's where you get all these ancient rituals and practices from. They practiced those things, and they also tapped into ancient knowledge. So because they're Luciferian, and just real quick, you can look at some of my other videos and I talk about this, that people that are Gnostic or Luciferian or of that ideology, they believe in the Garden of Eden story that the Bible tells us, but they believe it from the opposite. So they believe that Lucifer, Satan, the devil, actually was the good guy, and he was given secret knowledge to humanity that Yahweh was trying to keep from them. That's their philosophy. So when they say that they're Luciferian, they believe that they're enlightened, which the name Lucifer in Hebrew means the light bearer or the light bringer. That's where you get the word or the idea of Illuminati, those who are illuminated with the secret knowledge that was given by Lucifer. So keep that, keep that in mind when you think about these things. So Adam Weishaupt was one of the people who was the founders of the Illuminati in Germany. And some people may say, oh, that's all a myth. That's all been debunked. That's not true. It hasn't been. As a matter of fact, if you look at some of the laws, because the Illuminati was created around the 1700s, 1770 or something like that. Actually, many of the European laws, when they intercepted Adam Weishaupt, they found the documents that he had that was outlining the Illuminati's plan for world domination. They actually made it illegal in Europe for the Illuminati to be there and exist. So why would countries pass laws to make something illegal if it didn't exist, right? So obviously it did exist. So anyway, Adam Weishaupt was part of this and part of, the overall scheme or strategy to create these three world wars in order to take over. They also had a plan, and I'll probably do another video about all of the various components of their plan to enslave humanity for them to control and take control over people. Now, this is key. This is where I'm going with this. So you know that, again, this letter is old letter. It's been around for a while. And when you see the things that are happening, see, because I study history and look at it from a biblical perspective, when I see things happening, I don't look at it from my natural lens. I look at it through the spiritual lens in order to properly discern what is occurring. And so here's what they said about the Third World War. The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agent tour of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economic exhaustion. Here's what they said. We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism or origin of savagery and the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an idea but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer. This is their ultimate goal. Brought finally out of the public view, the manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. Since the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, world events in particular in the Middle East show a growing unrest and instability between modern Zionism and the Arabic world. This is completely in line with the call for a third world war to be fought between the two and their allies on both sides. This third world war is still to come, and recent events show us that it's not far off. So this is the three world wars. And so let me say something to you. It's not a coincidence when you get this information that has been around for a while. It's not a coincidence what you see is happening. And I believe that they have one of the strategies that they use is what's called an agent provocateur. And an agent provocateur is when they put somebody in there who they have to stir up or fan the flames. They act like they're on the other side or against the system, but they're actually working for the system. Even during the time of some of the riots during Black Lives Matter, in Missouri, when Mike Brown got killed, it was reported that they were actually hiring and busing people in to come in and to riot, because that's part of their strategy. And they say that they're going to create order out of chaos. So they create the chaos, and then they're the ones that has the solution. Another philosophy is called the Hegelian dialectic. So Hegel was from Germany as well, and he came up with the Hegelian dialectic. And what the Hegelian dialectic is problem, reaction, solution, or thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, as it's called. And what that means is that they have an ultimate goal, which is what they call the synthesis or the solution. They create the issue, which is the thesis or the action. They anticipate the reaction, and then they give you the solution, right? So you have thesis, antithesis, synthesis, or you have problem, reaction, solution, right? Now here, let me give you an example of that. I'm gonna give you a very simplistic example of that. If I wanted to sell you water, I could cut off the water in your house and set your house on fire. You would run out and you would have need of water to put your fire out. I give you the water, right? Problem, reaction, solution. Let me give you Revelation 13. Revelation 13, it reads verse 4, and they worship the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, and who is able to make war with him, right? This is in alignment with their strategy. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle to them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And so that means that there is going to be a remnant of people who will not fall for this, but those who are in Christ will be the ones who prevail in the end. And ultimately, if you read in the book of Revelation, it says that the nations of the world will make war with the Lamb, but he will overcome them because he is the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Be blessed. Keep your eyes open. And until next time, peace and blessings to you.